All right, recording has begun. Thank you for joining us for, episode whatever of the Worldwide Slot Car Chat. I'm your host, Greg Gaub, Slot Car Racer, blah, blah, blah. Today we've got Luff Linkert, Russ Paver, John Kitt, Lloyd, Mr. Cunningham. Down at the bottom, we've got Kelly Avery and Leo. And it looks like we've got, who's on the list here? Oh, Chris hasn't joined us yet.
Ooh.
Oh, we got to turn off the waiting room. Let's get him in here. That's not Chris, but let me turn off the waiting room here.
I love what the green screen is doing to your hair.
Thanks for joining us, Slothead. And hopefully we get some more people now. Everything is enabled, so you guys should be able to share as necessary. As I was asking right before hitting record, does anybody have anything they'd like to show and tell? Russ, it seems like you're ready to go. You want me to go ahead and spotlight you?
Yes, sir.
All right, go for it. Woohoo! Does it look as good in person as it does on the screen?
Oh, it's like glass.
Wonderful.
Truly is. There's number 8. Number 7. Now, number 7 gets this. You can see what I was talking about on the gimbal.
Mm-hmm.
This rotates and splits the guide. Stays in the center. Only there's 4 tires, obviously. Only one drives. And it's built so that the one drive wheel or tire is a softer rubber than the other 3. So you can see the little groove in the tires. Can you see this?
Those 3 with the groove are the hard tires?
Yes, those are the hard ones. This one would be the softer one, although they're all hard now.
I was going to say, what condition is that tire even in?
Not good.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping Dave's going to be able to help me out on this. This is the driver.
You're working with Dennis on the new chassis.
I mean, Dennis, I'm sorry. And here's one of the seats, driver seats.
So he restored that too? The other guy?
Yeah. Yep.
Cool.
So the other one, number 8, here's the gimbal.
Yeah.
And before I attempt to do this, I'm looking for the help from him.
It doesn't look terribly complex. I can't imagine that Dennis wouldn't be able to throw something together that looks original.
Yeah, I think so. And it'd be great. You know, if I could get these back operating, it'd be awesome. You know, put them all back together and they're in good shape. So I need 1 driver, 1 seat, 2 steering wheels. So I don't know. Might have to
Send some stuff to John
yeah,
for casting and resining.
maybe.
Oh yeah. Well, in fact, I think those drivers were originally like a rubber kind of stuff, wasn't it? Yeah, they were soft.
It's relatively soft for as old as it is.
Yeah. I guess much like the tires, it hardened a bit over time.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I might actually have one in my spares downstairs where I could actually start maybe building a mold right away for you.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, let me check it out because I've got way too much stuff.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
I mean, if you think it's in there, you might as well look for it, right?
I will. Yeah. Do you want me to look now?
That's up to you, dude. You can look now if you want to, or look later.
I have an idea where it is, but well, we'll go on. If I don't participate, I'll just check out and check.
All right, yeah. If you want to
I
look.
mean, do you want to sell that one or make one?
No. I'll make a mold, and then I can make it out of resin or out of urethane, whatever type of substance you want.
Yeah,
Okay.
instead of you sending Russ, instead of you sending yours to John, if he's got the same figure, he can just mold and cast that one instead of yours.
Yep, that would be great.
That would be cool. Looks like Chris joined us.
Hey, Chris.
Oh, Steve's on here too. I don't see Dennis on yet. He usually turns his video on. Hey, Steve. All right. Does anybody else have anything to show and tell? Questions they want to ask? Opinions they want to gather? If not, okay, go ahead, Lloyd.
Go on, Lloyd.
Yeah, we've just had the little Monte Carlo Rally Proxy, the 143rd one. I've spent 3 days in a hot shed driving little toy cars round and round and round. And the fact that these particular 3 ended up the winners was just pot luck, because 1 minute you put them on the track and it'll do a lousy lap, and the next lap it might be a decent one, but you get one decent one in 10 because the track was so hot. By our standards, it was warm in the shed yesterday, and the traction was just too good. And we've got hairpin bends on that track, 1 1/4 inch radius bends, and normally my old taxi slides around there with no problem, but even that wasn't getting round, and so it meant for a very strange proxy yesterday. The cars were not lapping as well as they used to, as they normally do.
Because too much traction made it harder for them to go around those tight turns.
They did, yeah. And
what was the method by which you rated the cars? You said 1 in 10 laps was good. Were you just taking the best lap or what?
On this track, all of the proxies are run on it. We just run several laps with a car, and the best lap is the one that counts. Because you cannot do, apart from my old taxi, you can't do 25 consecutive laps. If you do 2, you're going well at times. So the cars that were running at their best yesterday, funny enough, were slightly lighter. The heavy cars were sticking too much to the track. But the winner was this one.
Oh, hold on, let me spotlight you.
If I can show it, a Fiat Spider. Let me pull it back so you can see it.
Yeah, it looks
very
good.
nice little car.
What kind of chassis?
It looks very big there, but that's 1/43rd scale, so it's quite a tiny little thing. As you see there, we got a bit of tape helping the chassis, but that's one of Peter's, looks like one of Peter's 3D printed chassis in there. Certainly the guide is...
Is that tape or lead along the bottom there?
I'm not sure.
Could be lead tape.
This one has got some tape on it, yeah. Yeah, but as you see, that one has a pod on it.
How can the pod move? Okay, so the tape is a buffer for the pod movement.
Yeah, yeah. There is a little bit of movement there, but this is a rally track. It's bumpy. It's tight turns and everything. I don't think pods would make a great deal of difference. The cars bash their way around anyway.
What about
anyway?
How's the motor mounted in?
Say again?
How is the motor fitted into the chassis? Is it glued in?
I've certainly done that before.
I tell you what the tape is. The screws are under the tape, so he's put tape over to stop the screws falling out. That's what we asked them to do on the rules on that one. Oddly enough, second place was if I can find it. Oh, here it is. A ready-to-run Subaru. Carrera Go car that Peter has put a
Are you sure
silver guide in.
that wasn't an Arton? It looks like an Arton car.
No, it's actually a Carrera Go, this one. It's certainly a Carrera Go chassis, and it seems to be the chassis that comes with it. But he's put one of his own guides on it, swivel guides. But Peter's cars are always very race-worthy. They're very well prepared. And that one, again, it's not a particularly heavy car. It ran very well on the day. And the total surprise was my old Porsche. This has been around 4 or 5 years. And as you can see, it's got good battle damage under here anyway. Suddenly, it put in a very decent lap yesterday.
Suddenly,
sure. My cars usually don't do very well at all on my boxes.
Good job, Lloyd.
Very rare. But as you see, both that car and that car have plasticine underneath.
Plasticine for weight?
Yeah.
Nice.
Oh, that's what that is. It's green plasticine.
Yeah, just a bit of plasticine to this one was a little bit too light on the tail. Bit of green plasticine in there, and it helped it. Doesn't have to be heavyweight, just a little more weight helped. But we next, when I next have the 143rd Zoom meeting next week, we're going to decide, put it out to the people who are on there to decide the concours winner. Because I just thought, with me picking the concours all the time, I'm a little bit biased at times, and I keep picking the same maker because he makes a very good body shell.
Now, are you posting photos for the judging, or how are you?
What I'm going to do is just hold each car up. Although I will tell everybody where the photos are, because the photos are on Slot Forum and other places, so they can have a look at the cars there as well. But I'll basically be holding them up like this so they can have a good look at. I don't know about you, but when I see these cars on here, all of the writing and numbers are backwards.
No, that's your camera. It's mirror imaging, so it's easier for you to move the right direction.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Right.
It looks correct to us. So
yeah.
Tell us, Lloyd, if our viewers of the Worldwide Slot Car Chat want to see the pictures beforehand, where should they go?
At the moment, on Slot Forum, on Show Us Your Rally and Raid Cars.
And if they're just having a look at the forums, what sub-forum is it in?
Yeah, it's in Slot Forum, and in the, I suppose it's under Rally Cars or the Slot Rally and Raid.
Okay.
But it's current there tonight. I put these photos on this evening, but I will be putting them on to the 143rd 2020 Little Monte Carlo Rally Proxy. I'll be putting those on tomorrow anyway, so they'll be available. If you look in 143rd and for the Rally Proxy, you'll find them anyway.
Okay.
But,
and if they want to look at the pictures and then participate in the concourse voting,
yeah, I'm mainly
the link to your chat.
Well, I'm mainly aiming that at people who do 143rd models.
Okay, so but we can watch, right?
You can come and watch, yeah. Okay. But I think it's fair that they judge them because it's.
I should be a judge.
Yeah, unbiased.
I look forward to going in and looking at the pictures because pretty cars.
I will let Leo be a judge because he told me tonight that he thought this was beautiful.
And now, is it a secret ballot, or how are you judging?
No, all I'll do is normally I just pick which one I think it looks the best, but I thought I'll put it out and let other people who model in the scale have a look at the cars. Not all of them, just the ones that are of a particular high standard. Because some of them are, 4 of them are ready to run. I won't include those, obviously, but.
So basically to help you narrow down your top 3 or 4
Yeah, I'll get it down to about 6, I think, because this, to me, is the one that shows the spirit of the thing. It's a really great little model. Certainly not one of the quickest cars around here because it has a tendency to fall over. But
Well, you could always have, you know, the organizer's choice and the people's choice.
yeah, well, we'll have to see how it works out on that. But one particular maker, as I said before, with the Escort, his cars are a very, very high standard, but we've got some others that, to me, other people might think like to choose as well, like this one. Very well put together models.
Oh, that was the one with the Renault inserts, with the 3 lug inserts?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, that's nice. Oh,
They-
yeah,
they-
look at that.
They are 3D printed, those inserts.
Wow.
They're quite nice, aren't they? And of course, the perennial Mini.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, you got to have a Mini with Mini lights.
This thing screams around the track. It makes more noise than all the others put together because its little wheels are going twice as fast to get anywhere.
Probably as small as a Hot Wheels car. A 143rd Mini has got to be like 164th feeling car.
It's tiny. It's about the size, really, of a 164th slot car. I've got Fiat 500s that are smaller, though. But this one works so hard at getting around the track. It's a very beautifully put together little car as well.
Well, if the cat finds those, you'll never see them again.
Just be sure and get it on video and slow motion.
The problem is
the cat again.
the problem is on my track, I never have anybody around to video it for me when I've got the cars.
What about the missus? Doesn't she want to come and stand in a hot shed watching your toy cars go around?
Let's just say she isn't into toy cars.
That's crazy. All the women are, right?
In the same way that I really don't see the difference between one shoe and another one.
Coming back to
You're
the
like everybody
Volvo.
else. What was that, Leo?
Coming back to the Volvo that I like, it's the boot rack, the spare wheel on the boot rack that I like most. It's a nice touch to the car. So everyone should vote for that. It's not mine. It's not mine, by the way.
Now, are those straps made of plastic or actual leather?
I assume they're just made of plastic. Yeah, they look it. Yeah, but he did. This is the chassis on it.
Oh, wow. That's just a slab.
Yeah, with a rattle plate. And that rattle plate bottoms out every now and again on the track. But he said to me he didn't think the motor would last very well because it's got a tiny motor in it. And I haven't seen the motor. It's very small. This thing goes like a rocket.
It looks like it's a Sidewinder as well.
It is a Sidewinder, yeah. And it's got a very small motor in there. And it's obviously well geared down because it really does fly. But again, it has... it feels like lead. It's a very heavy car, and it was struggling a bit yesterday. But on a normal day, when it's not so hot, I'd like to try all of these again, but I won't now because the reason I completed the event yesterday is because our weather has changed completely now. It's wet all the way through. And out in the shed, I have to run a power cable to the shed to run things. So our summer is finished, so I no longer can run cars in the shed.
Yep, well, I'm in the same latitude.
Mm.
Any more on the 143rd stuff there, Lloyd?
Not really. I've been surrounded in these for a long time. Oh, just one out of interest, the good old Artin.
That is an Artin car?
That's an Artin car. For this person, Oxel Cube was their first effort, and it runs surprisingly well. It's got a guide, had a guide fitted under there, a swivel guide, and it runs well, but it does not stop at all. And on the long downhill section on the track, on one occasion, it just took off and went right across to the other track a couple of feet further away. That's why it has no windscreen anymore.
And did your proxy have any rules about interiors and details and stuff like that?
Well, this one did have two drivers' heads, but they come off when it went across the track.
So you had a legit rally crash there.
That was a really decent rally crash, that one, but it's a plastic body and not a resin one.
Well, those guys won't be driving Formula One anytime soon.
No, but it was interesting to actually drive an R10 car with a swivel guide under it, because it makes it an awful lot more drivable.
Not to mention not having magnet traction. I mean, those cars on plastic track are just limpet mines. They just stick. I mean, worse than Carrera. They're ridiculous.
When I used to have a plastic Carrera Go track, take the magnets out of any of these cars, particularly R10s and things, and they just sit there wheel spinning.
Yeah.
But when I painted the track with what you call latex paint, immediately all of the cars, including the R10s on hard tires, were getting round all right. So it makes a difference what the surface is. But I just don't get on well with plastic track, because I run cars without magnets.
Yeah, with plastic, it's the tires really have to be selected specifically for the plastic track. Yeah, but pretty much any tire will run okay on emulsion or latex.
Oh, one thing I learned, he finally got back in touch with me. I messaged the chap who built this, who comes from Indianapolis, and these two had real problem right from the start with too much grip, and I found out later that he has Shore 20 tires on there. Whereas we use Shore 40. Shore 20 must be for drag racing, I should think.
Well, yeah, they'd be sticky as all get out.
Yeah, just far too much grip, and fairly tall cars as it were anyway. But I did change a couple of tires over onto them, some of my old tires, to try and improve it, and it did make a difference. But there's just a limited amount of time you can devote to doing this, you know. I could get all of these cars to lap well if I spend a bit of time with them, but I haven't got the time to work on all of them.
Yeah, and that's why most proxies don't allow very much, if any, host modification of any kind. Some of them even ban repairs.
Yeah, on my proxy, because I make the rules, I make it that if I can get the car to go around the track, I will. So if I have to adjust this or bend that, I will contact the owner and say it would probably work better if I did so and so, and they usually let me do it. But I haven't opened any of these cars this year, and 3 of them, which I won't mention, stopped running after a little while.
Probably just broke a wire or something.
Probably. I know one's got a broken wire, but last time I run the event, I did open up cars that needed soldering and things like that, but I didn't do any of that this time.
But you got some laps out of those cars before they stopped.
I did. Yeah, they were some of the surprisingly good cars as well. Some of the ones that are in the concourse, but they worked very well for a period of time, and then the vibration, the bouncing, was just too much for them. But just one last comment before I do disappear is these WRC cars. Yeah, these WRC cars are very pretty, and they run very well indeed. The problem is they are so wide, they bounce off every little bit of scenery all around the track. They spend very little time going in a straight line.
Now, do those come with slide guides?
Yeah, this one's been modified. That's one of Peter's guides in there. Let me see if I've got. This is this has got an original guide in it.
Okay, so a lot like SCX.
Yeah, well, they're made in the SCX factory.
Okay.
The thing that I had done to them, and I'm having real problem doing everything backwards here. I asked people to make them turn more, because on the last time we had some brand new WRC cars, and the guides are rather restricted to how much they turn, and they couldn't get around the tight turns. But these are getting around fine.
Now, Lloyd, would a pin guide be advantageous for your track or not?
No.
Oh.
A few years ago, I did run the who is it? Gentlemen Drivers, a French 143rd group. I did run their Carrera Go rally proxy on there, and a lot of them had pin guides, and I got them round the track by putting various amounts of weight in them, because a car without weight just doesn't work. All of these cars weigh from about 40 grams up to about 55, 60. And except for the winner, which is about 35. But the pin guide cars did all right back then, but I've found in more recent times, they tend to spin out too easily on the downhill sections, not the uphill. It's fairly easy to drive them fast uphill, but when you're trying to go downhill, they're rotating much too quickly. On this track, you really have three separate sections. You've got the zigzag hill climb, which is power on, power off all the way up it. Then the long zigzags that go down. And then you've got the very windy zigzags going down. And those windy downhill ones are very tricky with a car with a pin guide on.
Now, as I recall, and this is from my poor memory, it's basically one end of your shed is going up, and then you've got a long straightaway going back to the other end, and then you're coming back down.
That's
Do
right.
any cars benefit from higher speed on that section, or is it pretty much all in the turns?
Yeah, I find the cars that can accelerate well between the turns, whether they're on the hill climb or along the top and coming down, the ones that can really make short work between the turns are likely to be putting in a good time. But all of these little cars are very, very lively. Even ready to run ones. They've all got about the same motor power, whether they're ready to run or scratch built, but they're more powerful than they need to be for their size. They're very lively, so speed is never a problem, but the more you can get of it. And one of the things is each car seems to have a turn that it doesn't like. And it's always a different one to the other cars. So you have to learn which car you have to nurse through a certain corner. And
is that because of wheelbase or weight or a combination of stuff? Or?
Nothing to do with that at all. Each car just seems to have its own peculiar habits, really. One bit of track it likes better than another. As I say, this is a very unusual track.
I mean, it's going to be all those things. You know, it's going to be the weight, the distribution of the weight, the grip of the tires,
it's all of those
height,
things, yeah.
the ride, you know, just everything, all those things. And even just the slightest difference between two cars will make a big difference in which turns it likes or doesn't like. How many volts do you run those at, Lloyd?
Some of them need very low volts, about 8 volts. And one or two of them like about 14 or 15 volts. It's a matter of adjusting. Some of them are undrivable at 10 volts. There's just too many volts for them. It's very important. The difference between 9 volts and 10 volts, it can actually make quite a difference in the performance.
So you spend a few laps trying to figure out the optimum voltage for that particular car.
To tell you the truth, I could spend a whole year preparing for this thing. Instead of I know in a normal proxy, when I run proxies on the racetrack, the cars come, we run them, we time them against the clock, and they go back in the box and go home. On these, they get an awful lot of track time before doing quick laps, before doing any timed laps, so that I know what each car does and how to drive it best, really. And that is the great fun about it. They're not all the same.
Do you ever change up controllers, or do you what?
I've only got one controller that works these days. All the others have blown up.
So you take notes about what voltage each car likes.
Yeah. I start them all off on fairly low voltage. These ready-to-run cars don't like too many volts at all. They fly around, and yet on their normal tracks, they're using 14 volts.
Because of the magnets on the normal tracks.
On magnets, yeah.
Very cool. I love all this information. Does anybody else have any questions for Lloyd before we seek another topic? I wanted to give Jim some time on his drag thing. Do you want to talk about that some today, Jim? Go for it.
Yeah, please.
Okay. Yeah, well, it's starting to gain some momentum. I'm starting to get messages from people who say they're building cars. We have our first sponsor, Alan at 132 Scale Racing, came on as a recommended preferred supplier. So he's in. I'm hoping.
Sorry to interrupt you on that one. Just to be clear to the viewers, ScaleRacing.com, 132slotcar.us, slotcarillustrated.com.
Yes.
I didn't want anybody mixing up the .coms and going, where am I now? Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So he's on, and starting to get the word out, starting to get some feedback back. A little bit about how we're running the race. And if I can share a screen, I'm going to attempt that, see if I don't lose things. Let's see what happens. If I share this screen, let me know if you can see a chart. Whoop, well, I don't know if that's what we're supposed to be seeing. Let's try that.
All right, now we can see it.
Oh, okay, good. So you can see this chart here. So this is our part of our classes list. We actually have 29 different classes, and each is defined by its body style, as they are in real drag racing, and a motor type. There's a minimum weight and some notes about what we're expecting of each of them. We've tried to include something for everyone. The unlimited experimental class, for example, will allow pretty much anything that will fit on the track, which means it needs to be less than 4 inches wide, 7 inches tall, and 22 inches long. And I have specifically invited a number of RC guys who, whenever I talk to RC guys about slot cars, they're always surprised that we haven't come into the modern world with brushless motors. And I often explain to them why brushless motors would be useless in a slot car. But so here's an opportunity for them to show us what they can do, because you can fit a pretty big brushless motor in a car that size. And that's the one class for which they don't even need to look like cars. It can be a complete science experiment, and we'll see what can be done. So I think I've got some people building some of these Frankenstein cars for that category. It will be interesting to see if any of them are faster than, say, the top fuel cars with the open Group 7 motors in them. Of course, the current record, at least the one that I could find, the best documented one for the scale, 124 scale quarter mile, is just under 0.4 of a second at 153 miles an hour actual speed. And that's pretty quick. So if we see something quicker than that, we'll certainly let the world know about it.
Are you doing scale quarter mile or something else?
It's a scale quarter mile. The racetrack is in Batesville, Arkansas, near here. It's a commercial raceway. They have a 8-lane king track, and they have a very nice drag track, which is quarter mile, which means it's 55 feet from start to finish, with a 27-foot shutdown area, heavily glued, of course. They mostly, as most contemporary drag programs, have gone to bracket racing. Head-to-head racing is not as popular as it once was, but for a proxy race, it really does need to be head-to-head so that it's about the cars. When we receive the cars, of course, we'll be unboxing them by category. We're asking people to put the registration number on the outside of the box on the label, and we'll organize all the boxes by registration number so that we can pull all of one class, unpack it, lay them out for judging. We've got 3 judges so far. All of them have model building and drag race experience. So they should know what they're looking at. And I think they're all really well qualified. And none of them are involved in slot racing, so they don't know anybody. And in fact, they won't see anybody's name or anything associated with the cars they're looking at. So the cars will get points based on their appearance. And I'm making it kind of hard on the judges because I know that they've told me, like in model contests, if they have 40 or 50 cars, you know, they can sort them out real quick down to the top 5 or 10 that they really need to study. The rest of them are just set aside. But to me, you know, someone goes through the trouble of building a car, and they may know up front that they're not going to be a very top contender, or they're counting on the car's speed to compensate for how it does in the appearance. I've asked them to rank the cars from first to last. So the ugliest car in the category will get a point, and the best looking car in the category will get a point for every other car. So if there's 50 cars in the class, it'll be 50 points to the best car and 1 point to the worst. The judges were okay with that, in part because they said that usually when they do like a model contest, they've only got 45 minutes or an hour maybe to do the judging, and they can simply run out of time to really study them. So since there's no one waiting in real time, there's no one present for them waiting for the announcement, the judges will have whatever time they're willing to dedicate to judging to sort them out. So the cars will get their points, 1 through whatever number of cars are in the class. And then because it's drag racing, that's a nice thing compared to a road proxy, which I have participated in and I love, is we're going to prep the cars all the same. We're going to put them on the track. We're going to throw a switch for the power. We're not using a controller because we don't want any variation in the way the trigger's pulled. So they're just going to get 100% full power right off, which is a challenge, but at least it's consistent for everybody. We'll record the ETs and the top speed, and again, we'll assign points based on ET and top speed from 1 as the slowest up to the fastest. So the scoring will be in 3 parts. 1 is appearance, 1 is ET, and 1 is top speed. That's how we'll score them.
And they're all 1/24th scale, Jim?
Well, no, we have 29 classes, and if I was confident I could show you the next screen, I would show you the rest of them.
Oh, you can. If you go up, there's a little arrow that shows up as you did, and it should show you your next.
Oh yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's the next set.
Oh, okay.
And there's one more and one more. So let's talk about the classes a bit. And I did include a 132 street class, which must use an SD type motor. And it must use a production plastic chassis. And of course, I'm reminding them that magnets are ballast on copper braid. So this is very much a car that will have to be based on a more or less off the shelf 132 car. There's the 3D printed class, which can be either scale. There's a, let me back up one here. Yeah, there's a 132 Super Comp class where they can use the long can motors and pretty much anything goes on the chassis. So they can do a scratch built chassis and so forth. The 132nd Super Stock, they can use the hotter FK style motors, and it's sort of a class in between those two. So there's 3 132 classes. I feel a little bad now with all these classes. We didn't include 143, and I also left out HO. HO I felt justified because, of course, the cars would have to be modified, or we'd have to somehow accommodate the fact that they won't show up with the sensors in the track that read the guide blades. We'd have to somehow adapt a large guide blade to HO cars to run them on the track, and I just didn't want to go there with the HO guys. I didn't really think about 143, so sorry.
Well, for the 132nd scale cars, are you shortening the track to make it like a 132nd scale quarter mile?
No, we're not. The 132nd scale quarter mile would be a distance in between the sensors that are in the track now. This is a permanent, wood routed masonite top track, and I don't think that he wants us to make modifications to it because the shutdown area would need to be changed and so forth. So the 132 will run the same distance. It's a little long for a drag race, but everyone will have an equal chance to set a time. So we're not going to worry about the scale distance or scale speed. It's all recorded and scored on actual speed in any case.
Cool. Well, especially with that unlimited class, you're going to have like artillery hits in the concrete wall behind it.
Yeah, well, we normally run a 17-foot shutdown area and rarely have anything hit the end. Of course, there's cushioning at the end of the track to protect them if they do. But for this event, we are extending it an additional 10 feet, which is really all we can do in the building. That makes the track 96 feet long in total. And the building's only 100 feet long. So that's about what we can. We even discussed putting a window in for the occasion and adding another 10 feet, but we think with the additional length and the heavy glue that we use, and you know, they'll stop. I think we'll stop. Well, now, of course, occasionally we do have some hard crashes on the end, but that's generally only occurs when the car is not in the slot and perhaps not even right side up as it goes through the finish line. If a car throws a tire, for example, which sometimes happens, a tire will tear, or break a gear or something like that. Sometimes it'll unsettle the car to the point where it's out of the slot, and then it'll skip through the glue pretty well. For the 1/32nd scale cars, actually all the cars, but I make a point of making sure the 1/32nd scale guys know about this. We are insisting on foam tires, because we find that the synthetic tires might give you good grip off the line, but they tend to skip over the traction glue at the shutdown area. So some of my vintage cars running on Paul gauge tires run quite well, but go pretty deep into the shutdown area. So we're going to insist on foam. That is one requirement.
And your area has shorts the rails, so the motor becomes its own braking mechanism.
That's correct.
And
yeah, the entire brake area, right, is shorted rails, so the motors are doing maximum braking there. Mm-hmm.
And at the very end, you've got some kind of foam or pillow or something, so it doesn't just hit a wall.
Correct. At the very end, there's it's actually a parachute. that's a cloth area on the last 4 feet or so, and then behind that is a very soft pad, a pillow basically.
Cool. Ray had a question. I want to read that for you. Jim, I like the full voltage start, but how do you keep them from bolting out of the slot at the start? Tuned wheelie bars and drop arms? I know nothing about drag racing. So what happens with a car that hasn't prepared properly for the possibility of wheeling out of the slot?
Right. Well, some of the classes allow for wheelie bars, and some do not. And the fashion in slot cars, in drag cars lately has been to get away from wheelie bars and instead to use flexible chassis and a fair bit of weight up front. So wheelie bars, at least at Batesville and some of the other raceways, have been surprisingly less needed than you would think. And they get away from them in bracket racing because they find they're able to keep the cars more consistent when they're set up without the wheelie bars. You know, these guys are concerned about hundredths and thousandths of a second on consistent runs. So if the car is properly set up with or without wheelie bars, it should keep its nose down. We certainly consider that one of two things may go wrong with the cars on their first run. One is that they will wheelie out of the slot, and the other is that they just don't hook up and they spin the tires. For that reason, the base entry gets you essentially one run. You get one pass. So the car is either right or it isn't. But a drag racer being concerned about that situation might set the car up different ways. You might go to a higher gear to soften up the launch. You might add more weight. You might change tires. So as an option, we're allowing the racers to request 2 additional runs with 2 different setups. So we'll not be working on the cars at all before the first run. If they've requested the second a second run, our pit crew, our experts, will the entrant will include a little checklist that's on the site that says, you know, change the motor, change the gears, change the tires. He can check off all of the usual options that one might change to attempt a different result on the run, and we'll do those in advance of the second run. So he gets 2 opportunities to set the car up differently for different results, and we will record and base his score on the best of those runs. So I think most racers will opt for those setups. They need to send the parts. So with the car, there will be a little checklist that they'll print out that says, do this on run number 2, and a plastic bag with the parts for run number 2. And if they want, you know, the third run, there's a checklist, change these things. And if there are parts to be changed, weight to be added, or whatever, those must be provided for run number 3. So there'll be the opportunity to run them 3 different ways.
Now, do all the classes run at the same voltage? Do each class have their own voltage?
Right. The standard voltage that is run at Batesville and most of the tracks is 16.4 volts, and they back that up with power supplies with capacitors to make sure that they're delivering all the voltage quickly, all the amperage quickly. So the standard voltage for all of the cars with contemporary motors will be 16.4, which is what most contemporary drag guys would expect, and is not too much for the 132 motors, which many of them run on that in their home sets. But another option that we're giving the racers is they can opt for the elimination round, at which they can step up to a higher voltage. Now, we did this for a couple of reasons. One is that we have classes for some of the vintage motors from the 60s. Back in the early 60s, there was a flurry of activity in drag racing, and people built some very interesting cars with magnesium chassis and heavily modified Pitman and similar almost industrial motors. And back in the day, at that time, they ran with 3 marine batteries. So it was effectively 37.5 volts. That was the standard. And some of the tracks had the option to run with 2 batteries. That would be your 25 volts. And then of course, 1 battery was 12.5. So most of the 60s raceways, the bigger ones, had those voltage options, and the main event was really running at those 37.5 volts. So we are going to offer all, well, we're not going to bother offering the 12.5 volt. We're going to run the standard volts of 16.4 with an option to run at 25 for any of the contemporary motors. And I say that because we found that, you know, contemporary 16Ds, Super 16Ds, Falcon and Hawk motors, things like that, run about 20% quicker on the 25 volts. And it's interesting and a bit of a challenge to set up the car to perform that way. So there's a separate optional round for people who want to do that. For the large Pitman and padlock motored cars, they will start at 25. We've had no failures of those cars at 25 volts. We had no failures of contemporary cars at 25. The contemporary motors, however, we found do fail at 37.5. We've had numerous motors blow at 37.5, but mostly the modern stuff.
That must be fun to see, though.
Yeah. Well, you know, what would drag racing be without the occasional supercharger explosion?
Exactly.
I mean,
Yeah.
that way people go, you know. So, you know, people said, well, gee, what if my car crashes? It's like, well, you'll make the highlight reel. You know, good news. Your sponsors get extra film time.
Well, I can imagine that even in scale, you know, what you described earlier about like a gear blowing or especially a tire coming off.
Oh,
it
yeah.
would just go the same way a real drag.
Yeah, yeah.
machine
Some of the
would go.
failures are pretty spectacular, and so I am negotiating with a professional videographer, and we did a session the other day, and with his cameras, we get beautiful, clear images of the cars. And we're actually able to set a camera at the start line from behind the car. So you see the car, the Christmas tree, and it goes, you can see it all the way to the end of the track as it runs away from you. Which is interesting. That viewpoint is much more interesting than anything viewed from the side because they're so fast you can't really see them go by. But you also do see from the rear, you see the car move a bit side to side as it struggles for grip and so forth.
Get some nice slow motion stuff going on there too.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, we can definitely slow it way down. And then there's a second camera which will be at the top end, catching the finish line. And so the car will come into view as it goes through the finish line, and then you'll see it come to a stop, hopefully. So
Now,
if
all you need now is a little Jim McKay to do the the commentary.
Yeah. So we're going to run those two images, since they're kind of vertical formats, since we're looking at the track, on end. So we're going to run them with the start line view on 1/3 of the screen, the finish line view on the center of the screen, and in the bottom right-hand corner over there is the feed from the race computer. So you'll see the actual results immediately on the screen. So as each car lines up, its registration number will be on the screen in the lower right, which will make it easy to find that bit of film because the numbers will come up in sequence. And as they run, the times will be right on the video in real time.
Well, I think you've got a real potential for, if something got, hopefully it doesn't go wrong, but if it does, I mean, have a faceplant award, give them like a bent up.
Oh, we have a best crash award. Absolutely. Yeah. Oh yeah, certainly. Yeah, we've got best crash award. I have heard rumor that that one racer might be fitting a firecracker in his car. I can't prove that, but he may be going for that award.
As long as you don't use real nitro, you're fine.
You guys are obviously planning a full production, after the event, video for everybody to watch and see. Oh, that was awesome. Are you doing any live feeds?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure about live feed yet because, for one thing, if we get the number of entries that we might, it's going to go on a long time, and a live feed would be nice. The other problem with live feed is that there isn't good internet access in the building. I've looked at bringing it in, but just to get a good internet access to a business, it's not a residents, the business, internet's more expensive. Looks like it's going to be about $350 for the month. So I don't know.
Never mind.
If I'm going to do that. But we are definitely going to record it all, and we'll be loading up each category. Registrants will all have access to the full videos, and as part of the judging, we're doing a very nice little photo session with each car. The way we're doing that is I've got one of those turntables, a mirrored turntable, and we're putting the car on the mirrored turntable at about, lifted up at about 45 degrees. And with the camera viewing, we can set the camera at an angle so that as the car turns, you can see every side of it, including the underside of the car, very clearly. So every car will get this little spin on the turntable, a couple of rotations with a very high resolution video camera. So we will have really good imagery of every car. The judges will be looking at the body and also the execution of the chassis and so forth as part of the appearance judging, and so we should have a lot of pretty stuff.
Sounds like a fantastic event. Did you have anything else you wanted to add, or does anybody have any questions they want to ask before we look for another topic?
I don't really have much else to add. I could go on and on, but that's pretty much the basis of it. All the details are on the website, which is a page off of the nomadraceways.com website. It's called the Slot Car Drag Race Proxy World Challenge. And,
actually, Ray had a question about rear guide pins. Are they allowed?
I was just going to say that. He's wondering if
Sure.
guide pins are allowed. Yeah.
We, I looked at a lot of rule sets for drag racing before I wrote ours that are on the site. And most of them were many pages long and included, armature diameters and magnet spacing and, timing specifications and weight and exactly, what years were permitted in the body styles and on and on and on. And so I wrote our rules to be as simple and short as possible. As it is, the procedures in the racing that we're doing, which are intended to be very fair and consistent and logical and manageable for us, are complicated enough. And I didn't want to get too technical on the rules for two reasons. One, I feel that beginners are often scared off by complex rules, and the more savvy builders, more creative builders will look at a simple rule set like ours and go, aha, there's a loophole, I can do that. Doesn't say I can't. So I, didn't disallow that. I don't know that it's a good thing, but there's nothing in my rules that says you can't do it.
So Roger Penske's going to show up and take the whole thing, in other words.
It could be.
It's sort of interesting that, Jim mentioned earlier that the trend is to more flexible chassis.
Yeah.
And when the cars come off the line, they do squirm side to side.
Mm-hmm.
That's the chassis reacting to the tires loading and the lateral pressures. And if you're running an inline, you get a lot of torque on the rear axle, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
My experience when we dragged a lot was the rear guide pin eliminates all of that to the point where the rear end just bounces right out of the track, because as the chassis twists, it's trying to find its equilibrium and settle. And if you inhibit that, the back end of the car just bounces straight up in the air and off you go. So, you know, I no rules against it, but I can guarantee you all of the top cars will not have rear guide pins in them.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah.
That sounds right.
Now, Jim, are you also including like a drop arm as well for wheelies, or?
No, drop arms are certainly permissible. There is a statement in there about drop arms in the rules. It says that if they're using a drop arm, that they must have an upstop or a ton of weight on it to prevent arcing. That is a concern with some of the vintage cars. You know, pretty much all the contemporary drag cars, the front wheels are off the ground. You know, and so if they are, when the judges look at them, it's going to cost you appearance points. So you're going to want them at least very close to the ground, and the guide, of course, supporting the weight of the front of the car. A drop arm is fine and would allow for a wheelie, and that's fine. And there's a wheel stander class at which that obviously would be necessary. I do have several drag cars with old school drag cars with drop arms that wheelie very nicely off the line, and it all works just fine. But the one thing about them, like say some of the early ones, if the front wheels are carrying the weight and the guide arm cannot maintain braid pressure, then we can get a fair amount of arcing, and that concerns us a little bit with wearing damage to the braid on the track.
John, drop arms look cool. They basically went out of fashion in 1968.
Oh, even for drag racing, Chris?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, as Jim said earlier, you know, one of the little tips we run the car down the track and see if the nose pulls out, and if it does, we'll add a little bit of weight on the nose. If you have a drop arm, you're taking all the body weight and most of the chassis weight off of pushing the guide down. You've only got a 2-gram drop arm with a guide trying to keep itself in the track. So if you freeze, you know, if you drag cars, circuit cars, a lot of the cars in the 60s had drop arms. If you freeze them and put them back on the track, either with a screw or whatever, you go, Jesus, this car is transformed. It's way better. So they look cool. You know, in the 60s, they had, you know, the little red wagon and all kinds of stuff at the commercial raceways, you know, wheeling down the straightaway. And it looked, you know, there was no question, it was cool. It just wasn't fast.
Right. Right.
Thank you.
Excellent information. So, barring any additional questions, we'll dig up another topic. I noticed when I was away on the previous meeting that you guys talked a little bit about 3D scanning. So I wanted to kind of circle back on that with you know, my limited knowledge on that. I'll go ahead and talk about that. It should only take a minute or so. But basically, think about it this way. Pretty much all the 3D scanners are creating a model based on points, not surfaces. So it's picking out a point right there, and it's picking out a point right there, and it's picking out a point right there. And the end result is lines between those points creating planes, usually a triangle, sometimes a rectangle. And the more points the scan has, the smoother the surface will be, but it will never be smooth, right? And so when you're doing a 3D print, you don't want a bunch of triangles representing a smooth surface, especially because sometimes those points are a little off. So it's actually a wavy surface. The 3D scanning works really well for people and statues and or organic shapes of various kinds. But when you want a nice smooth arch to a wheel well or a hood or just wherever on a car, you're not likely to get it from today's scanning technology. And there's a variety of technologies, from photogrammetry, where you're just taking a buttload of pictures and then the computer figures it out from all the pixels in the pictures, or you've got laser scanners, or you've got, you know, patterned light, you know, and its own photogrammetry. They all create points. They don't create smooth surfaces. So when Steve is talking about a good model, it's a model with an actual spline, an actual curvature, an actual smooth surface from point A to point B, not point A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, right? So the more CAD-like that model is, the better the print is going to be, regardless of your printing technology. Your FFF printers like Prusa and Creality Ender 3 and stuff like that, you know, they're going to have layer lines, but those are going to be enhanced by a bad model. You get a resin printer like an Elegoo Mars or a Prusa SL1 or whatever, they just have they have a lot thinner layers, and the layers kind of blend together because of the way resin printing works. That's going to make those odd bumps show up even more. So like Steve says, the better the CAD model, the better your print is going to be, and you're not going to get a nice smooth model from 3D scanning of any current technology that I'm personally aware of. Now, I haven't done just I didn't do my dissertation on 3D scanning, but I've looked into it. I've tried photogrammetry. I've seen a lot of high-priced consumer level 3D scanning technology. I've watched lots of YouTube videos about people saying, oh, this is the best 3D scanner, and it's still just a bunch of points making little triangles that turns out into a print that doesn't look as good as the thing that you scanned. So that's where we are currently. I imagine that in the next few years, scanning technology will be different. The interpretive software that takes those points and turns them into shapes will get better. Everything is going to get better. But right now, you're not going to go get a Corgi, stick it on a platform, scan it, and then print it and have it look as good as that Corgi car did on the scanner. It's just not going to happen right now. So if you want to get into 3D printing, in order to print really nice looking cars, then you're going to want to find the car or somebody who can model the car, or learn how to model the car yourself in order to make it into an actual model with nice smooth surfaces and lines and everything. And 3D modeling isn't really that hard to learn. Even I have started learning it, which is saying something. And Steve obviously knows some people who can do some seriously sweet car body modeling. So, you know, look for the resources, but don't say, well, I'm going to get a 3D printer and a 3D scanner and go scan that Maserati down the street and 3D print it. We're not there yet. Give it a few years. Maybe we'll be there in a few years. Well, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Did you ever print those figures?
No, but I did get a SLA printer. I have an Elegoo Mars now.
Oh, wow.
And I have not printed anything with it yet, but I know it's fully functional. I got it from a friend of mine. I'm waiting on, there's a flexible build plate like I'm used to with my Prusa. When I pull I never scrape a print off a printer. I just peel the plate up, snap it off, and I'm done. There is a company called Wham Bam that's making that technology available for resin printers, and I've ordered that, and those should be coming in the mail shortly. So I'm hoping that my first resin print is on one of those flexible plates, because the last thing I want to do is use a friggin' scraper to pop prints off of a steel plate. I want to be able to just go and have it come off. But
you ordered something through the mail called Wham Bam.
Yep, from a company called Wham Bam. Yep. Thank you, ma'am.
It comes in a plain brown envelope, right?
It probably will.
I just didn't know you could get that kind of stuff in the mail. Wow.
For a long time, actually, John. Don't you know?
John is a very protected individual.
Yeah,
by
he's
the
up there in
sounds of it.
Canada.
I read too many books.
So before we find another topic, did anybody else want to talk about 3D printing or scanning for me to
Well,
just
thanks
bad
for
idea.
that, because it was me that brought it up last time.
Yeah.
About the 3D scanning. So thanks for that, Greg. It's good information.
Russ, did you have a question?
No, I just wanted to mention, since Dennis is on now, but he was on when we were talking about these cars.
Yeah,
Russell,
I was
Russell,
going to
what?
circle back on that because we did kind of go over it at the very
Oh,
beginning.
don't worry, I'll pick it up with the
I'm
the
expecting
recording.
that we're going to have some extra time, so stick around, Russ. I'm sure you'll have time to show your stuff off to Dennis again.
Okay.
But before we go back to that, did anybody else have any show and tell, Q&A, whatever they want to do?
I've got a project that I've started
Oh,
on.
Dennis has something. He's got a
Alan
hand.
wanted to let Alan go. He wanted
Okay,
to-
Alan goes first. Go for it, Alan.
Before I start, I just want to say hello to Jim Cunningham. It's been 20 plus years since we met in Las Vegas. Okay, background on this comes from two different sides. There's been a series of posts on Slot Forum by a chap in Toronto. I guess Ken is his name. He drives a red Z28. And he's been discussing his adventures with making aluminum chassis from square aluminum tubing, describing the virtues of that, and with the suggestion that the drilling and so forth in a square aluminum tube makes it very easy to get a chassis which is perfectly square and accurate. That made sense to me. The other side of it is I have used over the years a number of front and rear brackets. My supply of the now defunct BWA front and rear brackets is dwindling. There are some rear brackets under the Bear Dog name, which are very nice. They're 3 pieces which can be assembled. They have no corresponding front brackets. And there's a chap, Richard Mack, who makes front and rear brackets. I have several examples of them. They are laser cut steel. They are not on his webpage, but if you write to him, he will come up with some. But in the meantime, I thought about other ways of doing it, perhaps leveraging what Ken has been saying. So I am just at the sort of the material supply and paper stage of this, but there are things such as this, which is a 4-foot long piece of stainless steel square tubing. I have it in several sizes. And I'm looking at making front and rear brackets out of this. With a very simple approach of the front bracket is a section with an axle hole drilled on the sides, a guide hole drilled up from the bottom, and so on and so forth. And I just want to talk about this a bit to get people's reactions and any comments. Why stainless steel? Well, I like steel. It's strong. You can cut it down very, very small. It solders very nicely, and it will not corrode. So 10 years from now, the hell am I talking about 10 years from now? That's silly. It won't be a rusted mess. And the problem with it is there are 2 problems. Stainless steel is not a friendly material to machine. It's hard on tools, it's hard to cut, and it's hard to drill. The drilling can be taken care of fairly readily by using coated carbide drills. There are not many holes to drill, and you don't need a wide assortment of drills to do it. The cutting, at the moment, I'm sort of roughing things out, is mostly done with abrasive wheels. and the final shaping is done mostly by grinding. Sawing and filing tends to be an exercise in futility. It is very strong. The other disadvantage, at least of the parts of the pieces or material I've assembled so far, is that there is not much choice in thickness for these square tubes. One set I have is a 1/16 of an inch thick, and the other is about 50 thousandths, a little bit less. 1/16 of an inch stainless steel is damned hard, and if you simply duplicated, let's say, a BWA bracket in it, it would also be quite heavy, despite the fact that stainless steel is a little bit lighter than brass. However, because of its strength, what I'm thinking about and what I'm experimenting with is I think you can cut down the amount of material radically and still maintain the same strength. Let's take, for example, and I don't have a sketch of this, a BWA front bracket, which was essentially a U with a bit of sheet brass on the side. I think it was about 35 or 39 thousandths, with a couple of holes drilled across it, 1/8-inch holes drilled across it. And in the bottom of the U at the front, there was a hole for the guide to fit into. Now, with the stainless steel bracket in the same configuration, you can grind away everything except about perhaps 3/16 of an inch upright for the axle holders, and it will be more than strong enough. Believe me, I've tried to bend it, and it's hard. So that's the approach I'm taking for some of these. The other thing about stainless, if you use the proper flux, solders very nicely. So my approach at the moment, my current thoughts on chassis building are a stainless steel front and rear bracket connected by a couple of pieces of rails of spring-tempered stainless. And then I've come to appreciate the virtue of a rattle pan attached underneath. It would also be stainless steel cut out to whatever degree you want to achieve whatever weight you want. So while I'm trying to finish up a couple other projects, that's the next thing which is on the bench.
Interesting. Chris, what do you think about that? That sounds like your neck of the woods.
Alan, I hope this is going to be a drag car.
Well, Alan, it sounds like you're removing quite a bit of material.
Yeah, I'm removing probably about 80% of the material.
Yeah. With good steel, you need, I mean, if you look at any of the Eurosport cars or any of the EDM chassis that are out there, you do not need much material at all. I mean, you can hack. I just picked up, I was up at helping Ernie rewire one of the tracks today that we're trying to feverishly get opened up. And he just had a couple of new chassis plates done that I picked up a couple to build up for him. And they're, you know, thin.
Yeah.
And were you looking for a reaction to the whole aluminum tubing chassis thing from Ken's Red Z, or?
Well, sort of whatever. This is what I'm looking at,
Yeah.
I found another source which I'm going to look into, and this is a U channel,
Yeah.
which I can get in about 20 gauge, which is, I don't know, about roughly 35 thousandths.
Yeah.
Which I still think is more than strong enough to handle anything in a 1/32 car.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it depends what you want the car to do, Alan. Ken's come over several times and he's brought over his aluminum chassis and run them around, and they go around just fine. Any chassis, basically, the execution of the chassis is way more important than the materials that you put into the chassis. Always has been, always will be. I've seen real simple, nice square flat chassis go around fine. And I've seen high-tech chassis that are twisted and bent and not done well, and they just run like hell.
Yeah.
So Ken's chassis go around okay. Perfectly fine. They're nice. They're fun. The club he is in, being fair, is not probably the most sophisticated kind of racers and stuff like that. So I'm desperately getting him. I was on the phone with him 2 days ago, talking to him about what he needed to buy to build up some brass chassis and solder some chassis together and all the rest of the stuff. So, I mean, they work fine if you're looking for a revolution in handling. A square piece of aluminum tubing with absolutely zero flex is not the answer.
Right. Well, that's why I tend to work with, in most cases, with end pieces and with this spring-tempered stainless wire.
Yeah.
Which
I mean,
gives me
I'm
flex.
trying to get him onto the next stage, and I'm trying to get him now to drill a couple of sets of holes on the sides of the aluminum where they come up. Drill a couple of sets of holes, put some piano wire through, and hang some pans out near the edge of the body. He puts all his weight on the center line, which works, but you can put half the weight on the perimeter of the chassis and do a better job in handling on the whole thing. So.
Oh yeah. Well, my objective typically, and for what it's worth, I do have some background in physics, is to minimize the weight along the center of the chassis and put as much weight as I can as far out as I can get it.
Well, the modern sort of perimeter chassis came in, I don't know, 15 years ago, whatever, and ever since, if you look at any, ultra fast car, it's all perimeter.
Yeah. Well, I also spent a number of years hanging off the side of a racing dinghy.
Yep.
You want to increase the polar moment of inertia as much as you can for the amount of weight that you have.
Yeah.
The thing that gets me about stainless steel is if you scratch it, you're in trouble because it takes so much effort to polish it out. Whereas if I scratch brass, not a problem. I can polish that out pretty quick. But stainless takes forever.
Actually, go onto the Fordham website.
Yeah.
And what you will find there is an assortment of abrasive impregnated, probably nylon brushes, which you can mount up in a Dremel and do a very good and very quick job at taking scratches out of stainless.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't built a stainless car for a while, I must admit.
You just have to alter the position of your signature on the chassis, Dennis, to wherever the scratch starts off.
Yeah.
Well, that's a nice segue into what you wanted to show us, Dennis.
Oh, okay. Well, first things first, I'm going to just quickly, where am I here? Quickly share my screen and show a photograph talking about stainless steel chassis. That was one that I built for my friend Russell Sheldon, and he wanted a replica of, or an interpretation of the full-on sidewinders that people like Ed Lewis and a couple of others used in around the early 70s, I suppose, or mid-70s maybe.
May I ask a question?
Yeah.
I've seen this in vintage chassis before, but the double wires to each brush, is that just because they thought two wires were better than one, or?
Well, it's in those days, the wire was so thin and small that the chances were that it would break somewhere along the line. They didn't have the really fancy multi-strand soft copper stuff we have nowadays. So very often, where you soldered it to the front, to the guide, it would break. So they used to put it on 2 or 3. They were pretty small gauge in those days too. So that was part of the reason for running.
So it's kind of like a NASA redundancy thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely a redundancy thing, a reliability and redundancy thing. Yeah.
Do you have, Dennis, do you have a picture of that steel chassis you built in for that 9083 that Gyrus painted up?
This is the one. It was a 9082, the yellow one. This is it.
Did Gyrus do the body on that?
No, Gyrus did the painting of the body, but the detailing of the body was done by a fellow by the name of Chris Clark.
Yeah.
And he absolutely nailed this thing. He had the most unbelievable, there it is. Can you guys see that?
That was the white and orange Porsche, right?
Yeah, so white and yellow,
Yellow or orange or
and red at the bottom. The guys at the
You need to stop sharing the chassis before we can see a different
Okay.
picture.
All right, and then I got to share again. So you're looking at that one,
There we go.
There it is.
and it's a vacuum formed body, and Gyrus Watson painted the body and did all the decaling. And this fellow Chris Clark in Texas, he scratch built the cockpit, put in a driver, and he scratch built all of the engine, transmission, and exhausts at the back, roll bar, the whole piece. It is absolutely unbelievable thing.
I'd have thought that was a resin car.
No, it's that's a vacuum form body,
Wow.
a Lexan vacuum form body.
That is so
And
nice.
that was the one that was on top of that chassis I just showed you. But that wasn't what I was about to show. What I was on about was this. This is the new MR slot car, Porsche 911 Gt1 Evo. It already has some of my stickers on it because I just bought I bought a silver one, and so these have just arrived. They came into Electric Dreams last Thursday while I was there, and I bought one. The same chassis as the MR slot car McLaren F1 Gtr. This one, excuse me, this one already has a bit of tape on it because I've been tuning it up. Runs with a flat 6 slotted motor. Really very, very nice. There are one or two guys out on the forums and on Facebook already complaining that it's a little bit wide and a little bit short. It's about 3 millimeters in wheelbase shorter than scale, and about 6 millimeters overall shorter in length than it should be. But it's a pretty nice car. So that's my punt for Ernie today. And then last week I think I was talking about this one that I was building, and that one is done. Chris, thank you for the tip about the Shugu at the end bell end. It made a little bit of a difference, not a lot, but a little bit.
You're always just looking for little bits, buddy. Just looking for little bits.
Anyway, so that car's running pretty good now. So I'm looking. Yep, that's me for now. And is Steve Hendrickson still on? Yes,
I am.
I finally got my Ender 5 Pro working again.
And
Got a new board from China. Installed that, and of course it's not the same spec as the board that came out. So and then decided I was going to put one of those BL Touch bed leveling systems on it, and all of the instructions for that are for the previous board, not for the new board. So that didn't help. And
my God.
But eventually I got it all working and printing. Then I had a massive problem with filament leaking from behind the nozzle, and it just it leaked all over the whole extruder head.
Never heard that one.
And I had to take it all apart and clean the whole damn thing and reassemble it all.
My God.
Now it's working. Now it's going pretty good. And so I'm still experimenting. I reprinted the Jag, the Lister Jag. It's better. It's not quite right yet, but it's a lot better. And I printed it right-hand drive this time. I'm already busy with some filler to to fill in the last little bit of the pillowing that's still there. But I'm getting a handle on it now, so I'm doing okay.
So that's still, yeah, that file shouldn't be doing pillowing. So
yeah,
it's
not the file. I'm sure it's the it's the settings on the machine.
Greg, do you remember on pillowing if you dropping the temperature was one of the big things
for pillowing?
Yeah,
pillowing is pretty much always about your infill percentage, and then how many layers above the infill you allow for it to turn into a solid layer.
Yeah.
If you have really widely spaced infill, like 10% or 5%, then you need to have more
remember
bottom
that
layers
this has no infill because it's basically pillowing on the top surfaces, right? So it's sitting sitting on top of the.
I don't know what that is.
Okay, so to fill John in, yeah, go ahead and bring up a car, but basically
here's the previous one.
Greg, it's the top flat, top flat surfaces he's getting it.
Yeah. That's where the pillow.
John, you see, it just there's holes in it. It just doesn't cover them.
Oh, so those holes are pillowing.
That's what they call pillowing. For whatever reason. Now, when I printed this one, I had supports in the body, but only running longitudinally down the body. When I printed the new one, I put in a grid. So that's part of the reason that it's better.
What infill? What infill are you running?
The infill's 100%.
So I mean, I think it's 30.
And the layer thickness is 10 steps, right?
So in this case, when I say infill, in this case, what we're talking about is the support structure.
Yeah.
So infill is basically support structure that doesn't get removed later because it's
because it's inside the skin of the mold.
So pillowing is going to be from too sparse of an infill / support, not enough layers above that, or included in there is how fast you're printing.
That's
stuff that goes over the supports.
Sure.
Infill.
Okay. Yeah. And I have already dropped the print speed from the first one to the second one, and it looks like I may have to drop the print speed a little bit more. So there's two things that I still need to do: drop the print speed, and then on my slicer program, I have a thing called it's in a percentage, an extrusion percentage that's associated with the nozzle size. And it was set at 75%, and this one I printed at 80, and it's better. So I'll just keep going.
Is that specific to a type of printing? That number that you're talking about, like first layer?
It's probably specific to it. It's for a filament printer, but I guess it's a setting that's in Cura or in the Creality slicing software.
No, what are you using? Is it a global setting that applies to all extrusions, or is it a setting that only applies to a specific type of extrusion?
It's a setting that applies to a particular model, but you can change it for different prints. But
I'll be even more specific. Okay. So there's first layer extrusion width. There is infill extrusion width, perimeter extrusion width. That's what I'm talking about. What is that number for all of them?
All of those numbers, are not the same as the number I'm talking about now.
That's what I'm trying to figure out is what that number is representing.
Yeah, hold on. I'm just opening my Creality slicer so that I can let you know what it is.
Yeah,
it's called
a
flow percentage.
What was it?
Right. It's called a flow percentage.
And that's a global amount?
It's a global thing, and it's part of the settings for the filament. You set the diameter of the filament and the flow percentage.
Because usually I'm 90 or 95 for my flow rate.
Okay.
Have you tried using Cura?
No, not yet.
I was going to suggest that because you have Paul's settings.
Yeah.
And Paul's prints come out great, and he has, in essence, the same printer.
Yeah.
So I was always curious if you ran Cura, what you would get.
Every time I've read about Cura and about the Creality slicer, they say the Creality slicer is what Cura would like to be, and what it used to be when it was at its previous versions, right?
I can't
Pocket
keep up.
Slicer is Cura. Cura is open source. They're basically stealing Cura and
Yeah, that's what they did, but it's an earlier version, and the couple of reviews that I've read said that it actually works better than the latest versions of Cura. So I haven't tried, but I will try. Don't worry,
Yeah.
I will try.
I would bump the flow rate up a bit.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is I know those Cura settings work
Yeah.
on that particular file in that particular printer.
Does the CR, what you have, the CR5? What was it?
Me?
Yeah.
I have an Ender 5 Pro.
Ender 5 Pro. Okay. Is it still a Bowden extruder or is it a direct extruder?
No, it's a Bowden cable extruder.
So
It's
I would almost guarantee that the settings Steve uses in Cura are going to get you the same kind of prints Steve gets out of different.
I'll just have to put up my flow percentage, get it up to 100. Even
Well,
I know that's what Paul was using.
Yeah.
I mean, don't go straight to 100. I would say if you've been doing 75, do like 85 or 90, not 100 necessarily.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I went up 5%. It did look better. I'll go up. Although I can tell you now, I'm sure as hell not printing another lister. I don't need more than two.
Just
I got a left and a right-hand drive now.
I'll send you. What do you want to try next?
Actually, you did send me two. I don't remember what the second one was.
We'll try it with Paul's settings and Cura.
Yeah.
Since we're on the topic of 3D printing, I'm going to throw
11
out
hours of print, right? So that's the only problem.
one of the other 3D printing guys on SCI. I'm sure he's posted it elsewhere. Kevin is his username. Found out about and is experimenting with filament printing, like we're talking about. And then in order to make it even quicker and easier to eliminate any visible layer issues, brush on some of the UV cured resin like we use for resin printers. Just brush some of it on, right? And then let the sun cure it, or if you've got a UV curing, whatever. And then that is basically helping to fill those layer gaps and make it even easier and quicker to do a fill and sand to turn it into a smoother layer.
Sure.
So I mean, with the fine layer lines that you're getting out of your printer, and what I can get out of my printer, I'm sure Dennis will be getting out of his sooner or later.
Yep.
Well, the layer lines are good right now. If you look at the areas that don't have any pillowing, the finish is really good.
It is, but if you're going to do some macro photos of your car in some, whatever, if you just want to get that perfectly smooth, resin cast looking car, then rather than getting a resin printer, you could just do it on your FFF printer, and then just brush on some resin, just liquid resin, and let the sun cure it, and then instead of multiple primer filler coats, spray and sand.
How thick is that resin that you're using? Is it?
It's kind of like heavy cream, I would say, in its consistency. It's not super. It's not like glue, but it's not like water or milk.
I use that kind of UV cured resin. It's a urethane acrylate of some sort. I use that to encase the little tungsten pellets that I put inside the guide flags of the 124 scale cars. So I have some of that available. I could use that.
I mean, you got to have a good idea to start with.
Yeah. Anyway, that's enough of me.
Okay.
But thanks, Steve. I appreciate your help.
You're getting there. It's great.
Oh yeah, I'm getting there. I'm actually going to move the printer from indoors down to the garage because my computer's always down here in the garage, and my printer was in what was my office or my study, which is upstairs inside, and I was losing too much weight running up and down the stairs. Yeah,
well,
so I'm probably going to bring it out where I can see it at least.
Don't forget about the impact of ambient temperature on adhesion to your bed and
I have the printer inside a tent, inside a enclosure.
And humidity.
Yeah, and humidity. Yeah. Personally, I'm impressed that you added a BL Touch and you did all the necessary firmware tweaks and stuff like that.
I put a glass plate on it too instead of the flexible magnetic one that you've got. Found out very quickly that you need to clean that thing every time you print, because if you print again without cleaning it, it doesn't stick.
Well, I don't think the Creality Flex is the same as the Prusa Flex. But yeah, we wipe it down with an alcohol wipe, before every print. But
Okay.
yeah, every printer is a little bit different. All right, so we still got a few minutes left. Does anybody have anything else they want to talk about, ask about, show and tell about? Go ahead, Russ. You're muted. You're muted, Russ.
Sorry. Dennis is on now,
Yes,
so
sir.
I'd like to go over these cars with you, Dennis.
Yeah, go for it.
What happened to him? Oh, there he is. Yeah. Okay.
Here we go.
Yep.
Okay, so
Lovely.
that's going to be number 7, number 8.
It's the red one. Yeah. Yeah. He did a great job on those bodies.
He did. Now, the problem is, here's the chassis for number 7.
Okay.
All right.
Uh-huh.
The gimbal's there.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's something wrong with it because it's loose. I don't know how the gimbal is supposed to go in these.
Yeah.
That's one. Here's the driver for that one.
Okay, Russ.
Yeah.
Here's the one I found that I've got. I don't know how close it is.
There we go.
Oh, wow.
You're holding it against your fingernail like this.
Okay, so you can see.
And now it's focusing on his face.
Yeah, cover your face.
It was actually better the way you had it. Yeah.
Okay, hang on. I'm gonna put my finger up and hold it like this, and then see if that works. Does that work?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Give you a bit of a size.
So
Yeah,
the
except you cut
base,
yourself.
his
Yeah.
hips. How wide are his hips? About an inch.
Yeah, about that, right? It's a 1/24. I think this is from a later Skelectrix kind of thing. Although, yeah, you see the way the arms are. Your arms are a little more square than this guy's.
Yeah, they're a little more raised too.
Anyway, I mean, it's not
But anyway,
the little driver that Russ has got. It won't be difficult to take a mold of that.
No,
So-
not at all. Not at all.
okay, so here's the seat.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you one of those or two?
I need one of those.
Okay.
I've got both gimbals. I don't know if they're good. They look it.
Okay.
Here's one.
Well, we'll find a way of getting it working. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So the cars are missing the steering wheels. So it would be the steering wheel, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
goes right in there.
There. Yeah. Yep. We'll find photographs of some.
Yes.
I was gonna, was the steering wheel tin plate or was it plastic?
Metal as template.
Where's the template? Okay.
Well, there's no problem if you have a seat, Russ, and if you have the driver, you have my email address. We can converse, but casting the seat in resin and the driver in either resin or urethane or whatever you want, it's not a problem.
Okay.
So it'd be good if John can do that. I can do the mechanical parts of this thing. But John will be better at doing the molds and castings.
Now, did you want them painted as well, or do you want, like, I saw that the seat was green. We can actually cast it in green resin for you to match.
Well, the seat is green. I'm going to try to find some original photos of these brand new so that I can tell, because best I can tell, I looked at one photograph and one of the seats was red. So the seat was red. This one's green.
What is the objective here? I have a very large stock of tin plate Scalextric parts.
Oh, really? For these? For
Yeah, what are you trying to do? Because, I mean, you know, back in 58, 59, I collected quite a few of the cars. I'm quite familiar with their foibles and problems. I know, for example, I have somewhere needs to be unearthed probably a half a dozen or more brand new armatures still in their paper wrapping.
wow.
I believe, Russ, you're basically trying to do a full original restore on those cars.
Right. Right. I would like the two cars to be able to run. Not that I'll run them all the time, but I would like them restored to running condition. And like I said, you know, the paint's phenomenal on the cars.
Okay. My email is patron, P-A-T-R-O-N.
Hang on. One more time.
Patron, P-A-T-R-O-N, at ecurimartini.com.
Curie Martini.
E-C-U-R-I-E-M-A-R-T-I-N-I.
You mean
What is-
Patron at Curie Martini?
Yeah, I would. No, it would be Patron at securitytequila.com.
No. Ecuri Martini. And by the way, that name predates by some years the Italian aperitif makers' entry into racing car sponsorship.
Yeah, you'll have to tell everybody the story, Al. I know it, but I'm sure not too many others do.
Well,
Goes
if they've
back
been watching
to,
this, if they've been watching this Worldwide Slot Car Chat, they've heard it at least once.
Oh, okay.
I put
That was
the
before I joined.
email.
Sorry.
I put the email address in the chat. Patron at ecurimartini.com. Right?
me.
Thank you.
Okay.
Now what I'm going to do.
Now, do you happen to have a blue number 9 Ferrari?
I will have to look. You know, I have just closed down my off-site storage and the box, which incidentally is in decent condition Ren W152 scale box.
Wow.
That's what's holding all of my parts now. I will have to dig it out and look.
If you can look, I would be interested in a number 9 blue Ferrari. Same year, I think it's 57 or 58. Mine are 57s. And probably any other template stuff you have, complete cars. And I don't, Dennis,
You.
should I get the parts?
I think
Should I get the parts from Gary or let you get the parts or what?
from Alan.
I mean,
Yeah, I'll get the parts from Alan if need be. I think let's get those things. Let's get the chassis and whatever down here, that I can have a look, see what needs to be done, and we can take it from there.
There were two weak points in those cars.
Only 2.
Well, 2 that I addressed on a regular basis. One was that the armature wires had a habit of becoming unsoldered from the commutator.
okay.
So you simply opened up the motor, resoldered the wire to the commutator, and closed it back up again. Now, this involved bending over some metal tabs, so you could only do this a limited number of times before everything failed. I know I do have some motors. I'm not sure what their condition is. The other weak point was that because the car spent most of its time going in a straight line, the shaft of the gimbal would tend to wear a groove in the contact points on the pickup pieces in the gimbal. I found some solutions to that. You could go in, take that piece of metal out, put some hard solder in it and polish it back, and it would work for a while.
Of the gimbal itself?
Yeah.
Okay, so this gimbal, I can take my fingernail and run it across it, and I don't feel any wear spots.
No, it's not. It's not the wear on the gimbal. It's the wear on the contacts in the gimbal housing.
Okay. Gotcha.
It can, you know, it spends most of its time going in a straight line, so it kind of wears a groove.
Right.
And the problem with that is it then becomes reluctant to turn in a corner.
Okay.
Got it.
Well, I'm gonna send everything I have to you, Dennis.
Sure.
And I sent you a private chat, so if you can just kind of let me know what you're thinking.
Okay.
Now I can even give you a hop-up hint on those cars.
Uh-huh.
I was living in New York at the time. I found, you know, Polk's Model Craft Hobbies on Fifth Avenue and 34th Street. Ended up going to an exhibit they had set up on a New York auto show, and I took a car with me. Now, what I had done, if you look at those cars, you recognize that the bodies are held to the chassis by tabs bent over and fit through slots in the chassis.
Yep.
Now, if you unbend those tabs, and instead of fitting the tabs through the slots in the chassis, fit the tabs under the chassis, the car is much, much quicker.
Ah. Okay. I'll remember that.
Simply lowered the center of gravity significantly.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh.
And everything still stays together okay, and it doesn't rattle around. Or...
No, still, you know, stays together, doesn't rattle around.
Good.
Very cool. And on that note, we're at our 2-hour mark. I'll go ahead and stop the recording. You guys will stick around and chat as much as you like. For everybody else, see you next time.
Okay.
Bye.